with the research carried out by some scholars, they've discovered that the time that they call Salatul Zuhr, that they call the time of Salatul Zuhr, is actually the time for what? For Istiwa, when the sun is at the meridian, or the sun is at the zenith, when you are not supposed to watch. So maybe it is after 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, that the sun will move away from the zenith. And that's why, to be on the safe side, it is advised that if you look at the prayer time on your phone, on the application on your phone, they tell you this is the time, add 6 minutes to be on the safe side. So that by then you will have moved away from what? The zenith, the time of the zenith. So the same thing that you do for Zuhr, go and implement it in what? In Asr. Now, he said, حين تطلع الشمس بازغة حتى ترتفع وحين يقوم قائم الظهيرة وحين يقوم قائم الظهيرة. And likewise, when the sun is at the meridian, when the sun is at the meridian, we know Salatul Dhur does not come in until the sun has moved away from meridian. Until the sun has moved away from meridian. That is when Salatul Dhur comes in. So, when the sun rises in the morning, when the sun appears on the horizon in the morning, it will be going up, going up. The sun that rises in the morning will have a shadow of objects. Take for instance, maybe there is a pole that is erected somewhere. If you look at that pole will have a shadow. And that shadow will be longer than the pole. The shadow will be longer than the pole. That is in the morning. As long as the sun has risen. You see the pole, for instance, if it's a pole or a tree or anything, you see the shadow of that thing will be longer than that thing. Then as the sun is going up, that shadow will be reducing. So when the sun gets to the meridian, when the sun gets to the zenith, that shadow will stop reducing. In fact, it may disappear completely in some areas or during some seasons. It may disappear completely. But in most cases, there will still be residual shadow. So that shadow is called the shadow of what? Of Istiwa. The shadow of Istiwa. The shadow of when the sun is at the meridian. When the sun is at the zenith. So that period is what is referred to what? Qa'imu al-Dhahira. Qa'imu al-Dhahira. Hina yaqumu qa'imu al-Dhahira. At that period, you are not supposed to observe any nafila except what you have just discussed. Maybe compulsory salah, maybe if you want to go by the view of the Shafi'iyya, maybe some nawafil like Tahiyatul Masjid, like when you perform ablution or you have ablution, the 2 rakah that is encouraged when you have after you have performed ablution, or maybe those nawafil that we call salawat dawatul asbab. So you are not supposed to observe nafila when the sun is at the zenith. So hatta tazula, until the sun moves away from the meridian. By then, the sun will be going to the west. The sun will be going to the west. You know, it rises from the east. It's going up until it gets to the zenith. So after that, it will move away from the zenith, going to the west. So when it moves away from the zenith, going to the west, so this is called what? Waqtu Zawal, the time of Zawal. That shadow, that residual shadow that has stopped decreasing, You just see it, all of a sudden it has increased a bit. That increment is what marks the beginning of Zuhr. That slightest increment to the residual shadow. Now we have two shadow. We have the residual shadow, then we have the increment to the residual shadow. That increment to the residual shadow is what we'll be recognizing now. It's what you want to use, not the residual shadow. So if that increment comes, it is time for Zuhr, and that is the time of Zawal. Then if that increment continues again, continues, until it is equal to the length of that object itself. Don't forget, we are still having the residual shadow, but it's not the residual shadow we want to use. It is the increment. So if the increment continues to increase until it is as what long as that pole, for instance, or that tree, or that thing that you have erected, then we say this marks the beginning of Asri and the end of Zuhr. It marks the beginning of Asri and the end of Zuhr. Meaning the shadow all together, that is, the shadow of the residual shadow plus the increment, will be longer than the object now. Just as the shadow in the morning is longer than the object, but it starts reducing. It gets to a point, it stops reducing. Then it starts increasing again. So if the increment plus the residual are added together and they are longer than the length of that object, that marks the beginning of Asri and the end of Zuhr. So the point here is that when the Qa'imu Dhahira, when the sun is at the zenith and the residual shadow has stopped what? Decreasing. That time you are not supposed to observe Salah, except the compulsory Salah, and except, according to the Shafi'iyya, as-salawat dhawatu al-asbab. Now there is this issue here. When the sun is at the zenith, when you go to the apps on your phone, the time they put as the time of Zuhr there, according to the investigation and the research carried out by some scholars, they discovered that the time that they put as the time of Zuhr in that app is the time of what? Of Istiwa, when the sun is at the zenith. And you know you are not supposed to observe Salah when the sun is at the zenith. So, and that's why they said you have to wait a bit. You have to wait a bit till the sun moves away from the zenith. So there is an error, so to say, in that app. And all the apps, they have the same thing. All the apps, all the calculation method, they have the same thing when it has to do with what? The time of Zuhr, the time of Asr, and the time of Maghrib. All the applications that we have, they share the same thing when it has to do with Salatul Zuhr, Salatul Asri, and Salatul Maghrib. They only differ in what? Salatul Subhi and Salatul Isha. When this one will be telling you 18 degrees below horizon, this will be telling you 15 degrees below horizon, this will tell you 18.5, this 19, this. So their Fajr time differ. Likewise, their Isha time differ. So they will be telling you so and so below horizon, so and so below horizon. Some will even come in form of what? Hours. They tell you Salatul Subhi is 1 hour 12 minutes before sunrise. That's 72 minutes. They will tell you Salatul Isha is 1 hour 12 minutes after sunset. Some will come and tell you in hours, instead of using what? Degree below horizon. They will tell you what will be clear to you. 1 hour, 12 minutes Salatu, Al-Isha comes in after sunset. They will tell you that. And some will say more than that. And that's why a lot of people, they don't know the game behind these apps. Somebody just pick one format, maybe the Muslim World League or the ISNA or the Qura, and he starts making trouble in his masjid. This is something that they have done in such a way that you can also go through it, then compare it with what we have in the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the point here is that with the research carried out by some scholars, they've discovered that the time that they call Salatul Zuhr, that they call the time of Salatul Zuhr, is actually the time for what? For istiwa, when the sun is at the meridian, or the sun is at the zenith, when you are not supposed to watch. So maybe it is after 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, that the sun will move away from the zenith. And that's why, to be on the safe side, it is advised that if you look at the prayer time on your phone, on the application on your phone, they tell you this is the time, have 6 minutes to be on the safe side. So that by then you will have moved away from what? The zenith, the time of the zenith. So the same thing that you do for Zuhr, go and implement it in what? In Asr. The same thing you do for Zuhr, go and implement it in Asr too. Because all of them, they have the same thing. It is only for Fajr and Isha that they differ. But their Zuhr, their Asr, their Maghrib, they are the same. And at times, over that of the Maghrib, you see that the sun is setting before the time they put here. The sun is setting before the time they put there. So, and that's why you have to be very, very careful with respect to the reliance on this application.
The Guidance Facebook page. Follow, like, and share.